1. The night was quiet in the small town of Willow Creek, Montana. The stars shone brightly above the dense pine trees that surrounded the area, and the only sounds were the occasional rustle of leaves and the distant hoot of an owl. It was the kind of place where nothing exciting ever happened. Until now. Vrax stood at the edge of the forest, his sleek metallic body shimmering faintly under the moonlight. He wasn't human, though no one in Willow Creek could tell just by looking at him. His true form was hidden behind a holographic disguise, a tall man with short brown hair, wearing a leather jacket and jeans. To anyone who saw him, he looked like just another traveler passing through town. But Vrax wasn't here to sightsee or make friends. He had a job to do. The Krylos Empire had sent him to Earth on a reconnaissance mission. Their goal was simple: assess whether humanity posed any real threat to their plans for expansion. If not, Earth would become yet another resource-rich planet to exploit. Vrax had been chosen for this task because of his reputation as a skilled scout. Over the years, he'd visited dozens of worlds, always returning with detailed reports about their inhabitants. Most civilizations were primitive, easy to manipulate, and even easier to conquer. Humans, however, were supposed to be different, or so the rumors went. Vrax smirked as he thought about it. Humans were supposedly intelligent, capable of creating complex machines and exploring space, but from what he'd seen so far, they didn't seem all that impressive. They argued over meaningless things like politics and religion, polluted their own planet, and spent most of their time staring at glowing rectangles called phones. How could such a chaotic species possibly pose a challenge? He stepped onto the dirt road leading into town, blending seamlessly with the shadows. The streets were empty except for a stray dog rummaging through a trash can. Vrax activated his scanner, a device embedded in his wrist that allowed him to gather data about his surroundings. The readings confirmed what he already suspected. This place was insignificant. There were no advanced weapon systems, no signs of organized resistance, nothing that might indicate humans were preparing to defend themselves against invaders. Still, Vrax knew better than to underestimate his targets. That's why he'd taken precautions. Before leaving his ship, he'd programmed a cloaking device to hide its presence deep in the woods. No one would find it unless they stumbled upon it by accident, and even then, they'd probably mistake it for a fallen tree or some other natural object. Just to be safe, he'd also deployed several drones to patrol the area and monitor human activity. If anything unusual happened, he'd know immediately. As he walked, Vrax couldn't help but feel amused by what he observed. A group of teenagers laughed loudly outside a diner, completely oblivious to the fact that they were being watched. Across the street, a man argued with his wife over something trivial, their voices carrying through the open window of their house. It was almost comical how self-absorbed these creatures were. Did they really think they were alone in the universe? Or did they simply not care? His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed someone approaching. It was a woman, probably in her late 20s, walking briskly down the sidewalk. She wore glasses and carried a notebook, glancing around as if searching for something. Her name tag read Emily Dawson, and she appeared to be a journalist based on the articles tucked under her arm. Vrax frowned slightly. Journalists were curious by nature, always digging for information. If she started asking too many questions, she could become a problem. For now, though, she seemed harmless enough. Vrax adjusted his posture, making sure his disguise remained intact, and continued walking in the opposite direction. He didn't want to draw attention to himself. Not yet, anyway. As he passed her, Emily glanced up briefly, her eyes meeting his for a split second before moving on. Vrax exhaled silently, relieved that she hadn't given him a second look, but his relief was short-lived. Over the next few days, Emily kept showing up wherever he went. At first, it seemed like a coincidence. He spotted her interviewing locals at the farmer's market, jotting notes while sipping coffee at the diner, and snapping photos of the sunset near the edge of town. But soon it became clear that she was following him. Every time he turned a corner, there she was, pretending to be absorbed in her work but clearly keeping an eye on him. Vrax tried to shake her off by changing his routine. He visited different parts of town, lingered longer in certain areas, and even skipped meals to avoid predictable patterns. Nothing worked. Emily was persistent, and it annoyed him. Why couldn't she leave him alone? Didn't she have better things to do than stalk a stranger? One evening, as Vrax made his way back to the forest, he realized that Emily was tailing him again. This time she wasn't even trying to hide it. She followed him along the dirt path, her footsteps crunching softly against the gravel. When they reached the clearing where his ship was hidden, Vrax stopped abruptly and turned to face her. "What do you want?" he demanded, dropping the friendly facade he usually maintained. Emily froze, caught off guard by his sudden hostility. For a moment she looked unsure of herself, but then her expression hardened. "I could ask you the same question," she replied calmly. "Who are you, really? And why are you sneaking around town?" Vrax hesitated. He hadn't expected her to confront him directly. Most humans would have backed down by now, intimidated by his tone. But Emily wasn't like most humans. She stood her ground, her gaze steady and unwavering. Deciding to play along, Vrax forced a smile. "I'm just passing through," he said smoothly. "Nothing to worry about." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because I've seen you everywhere lately. You don't act like a tourist?" Before Vrax could respond, a low hum filled the air. One of his drones had detected movement nearby and was hovering closer to investigate. Emily's eyes widened as she spotted the strange object floating between the trees. "What is that?" she whispered, taking a step forward. Vrax cursed inwardly. This was exactly the kind of situation he'd hoped to avoid. Without thinking, he reached out and grabbed her arm, pulling her behind a tree. "Stay quiet," he hissed, "and don't move." To his surprise, Emily didn't scream or try to break free. Instead, she stared at him, her mind racing. Whatever fear she felt was quickly replaced by curiosity. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked softly. Vrax sighed, realizing that lying wouldn't work anymore. Slowly, he released his grip on her arm and stepped back. For a brief moment, he deactivated his disguise, allowing her to see his true form, a towering alien with shimmering blue skin and elongated limbs. Emily gasped, but didn't run away. When Vrax returned to his human appearance, he spoke carefully. "If you tell anyone about this, you'll regret it," he warned. "Do we understand each other?" Emily nodded slowly, still processing what she'd just witnessed. "Yes," she said finally. "But I want answers. Who are you? And why are you here?" Vrax considered his options. He could eliminate her right now, erase her memory, or silence her permanently. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the determination in her eyes, or maybe it was the nagging feeling that she might actually be useful. Either way, he decided to take a risk. "I'm Alex Carter," he lied, "and I work for the government. What I'm doing here is classified." Emily narrowed her eyes. "That's not much of an answer." "It's all you're getting, for now," Vrax shot back. Then, without waiting for a response, he turned and disappeared into the forest, leaving Emily standing alone in the darkness. As she watched him go, Emily felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her: fear, excitement, and above all, curiosity. Whoever Alex Carter really was, she was determined to find out. Little did she know her decision to pursue the truth would set off a chain of events that would change everything, for both her and the entire planet. Part 2. The next morning, Emily sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee in one hand and her notebook in the other. Her mind raced as she replayed the events of the previous night. She had seen something impossible, a creature that wasn't human, glowing faintly under the moonlight. And yet, here she was, wide awake, questioning whether it had all been real or just some trick of the light. But deep down, Emily knew what she had witnessed. The being calling itself Alex Carter wasn't human, no matter how convincing his disguise might have been. His warning echoed in her head. "If you tell anyone about this, you'll regret it." But instead of scaring her off, his words only fueled her determination to uncover the truth. She flipped through her notebook, reviewing the notes she'd taken over the past week. At first, she'd thought Alex was just an odd traveler passing through Willow Creek, but now everything made sense. The strange energy readings her handheld scanner picked up near the woods, the unexplained humming sounds late at night, and the way he always seemed to vanish without a trace. There was more to this story than met the eye, and Emily intended to find out exactly what it was. Her phone buzzed on the table, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Ryan Mitchell, her childhood friend and former soldier turned cybersecurity expert. Ryan had moved to Seattle years ago but still kept in touch regularly. They often joked about their shared love for conspiracy theories, though Emily usually dismissed them as nonsense. Not this time. "Hey, Em," Ryan said when she answered. "You sound distracted. Everything okay?" Emily hesitated. She trusted Ryan completely. He was like a brother to her, but telling him about last night felt risky. Still, she needed someone to bounce ideas off of, especially since this situation was far beyond anything she'd ever dealt with before. "I think I stumbled onto something big," she began cautiously. "Something weird." Ryan chuckled. "Weird how? Like Bigfoot weird or government cover-up weird?" "Alien weird," Emily blurted out before she could second-guess herself. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then Ryan laughed again. "Okay, you've got my attention. Start talking." For the next 20 minutes, Emily recounted everything she'd experienced, from spotting Alex around town to seeing his true form in the woods. Ryan listened intently, asking questions whenever she paused. By the time she finished, his tone had shifted from amused skepticism to serious concern. "Wait, hold on," Ryan said. "You're saying there's an actual alien walking around Willow Creek right now?" "That's what I'm saying," Emily replied firmly. "I know it sounds crazy, but I saw him with my own eyes. He even showed me his real form. Blue skin, weird limbs, the whole deal." Ryan let out a low whistle. "Wow, okay. First off, are you sure you're not hallucinating? Maybe you ate some bad mushrooms or something?" Emily rolled her eyes. "Very funny. No, I'm not hallucinating. This is real, Ryan, and if you don't believe me, I'll send you pictures of the drone thing I saw last night." "A drone?" Ryan asked sharply. "What did it look like?" It was small, kind of spherical, and hovered silently between the trees. It didn't look like anything humans have built. Ryan went quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was serious. "Listen, Em, I need you to be careful. If this guy really is an alien, and I admit, it's a stretch, he might not be alone. Aliens don't typically travel solo, especially if they're scouting planets. This could be bigger than you realize." Emily nodded, even though Ryan couldn't see her. "That's why I called you. I need your help figuring out what's going on. Can you come down here? Or at least guide me remotely?" "I can do both," Ryan said quickly. "Let me grab some gear and book a flight. In the meantime, keep your distance from this guy. Don't confront him unless you absolutely have to." After hanging up, Emily stared at her phone, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. Having Ryan involved meant she wouldn't have to face this mystery alone, but it also meant putting him in potential danger. She shook her head, trying to push those thoughts aside. For now, she had work to do. Later that day, Emily decided to revisit the clearing where she'd encountered Alex. She brought along her camera, binoculars, and the handheld scanner she used for environmental reporting. If there was any evidence of alien activity, she wanted to document it thoroughly. As she approached the spot, she noticed fresh tire tracks leading into the woods. Someone or something had been here recently. Cautiously, she followed the trail, keeping her senses sharp. The further she ventured, the more uneasy she felt. The air seemed heavier somehow, charged with an energy she couldn't explain. Finally, she reached a large, open area surrounded by dense trees. At first glance, nothing appeared out of the ordinary, but then she spotted something glinting beneath a pile of leaves. Kneeling down, she brushed the debris away to reveal a smooth metallic surface. It looked like part of a machine, too advanced to belong to any human technology she'd ever seen. Before she could examine it further, a familiar hum filled the air. Emily spun around just in time to see one of the spherical drones hovering nearby. Its glowing red lens focused directly on her, and she froze, unsure of what to do next. Should she run? Hide? Try to communicate? To her surprise, the drone didn't attack. Instead, it hovered closer, scanning her curiously. Emily slowly raised her hands to show she wasn't a threat. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said softly, though she doubted the drone could understand her. After a few tense moments, the drone zipped away, disappearing into the trees. Emily exhaled shakily, realizing she'd been holding her breath. Whatever these machines were, they weren't programmed to harm humans. At least, not yet. Back at home, Emily uploaded the photos and data she'd collected onto her laptop. While waiting for Ryan to arrive, she began researching similar sightings across the globe. To her astonishment, there were countless reports of unexplained phenomena, strange lights in the sky, crop circles, and mysterious disappearances, all occurring within the past year. Could these incidents be connected to Alex and his drones? Just as she was piecing together a timeline, her phone buzzed again. It was Ryan, texting to let her know he'd landed in Bozeman and would be driving to Willow Creek soon. Relief washed over her. She couldn't wait to show him everything she'd found. When Ryan finally arrived later that evening, he wasted no time getting to work. After listening to Emily's updates, he set up a portable workstation in her living room, complete with laptops, cables, and specialized equipment designed to detect electromagnetic signals. Together, they analyzed the data from the clearing, comparing it to known frequencies used by Earth-based technologies. "This isn't random noise," Ryan muttered as he studied the readings. "It's structured, almost like a language. Whoever built this stuff is communicating somehow." Emily leaned over his shoulder, peering at the screen. "Do you think we can decode it?" Ryan shrugged. "Maybe, but it'll take time. We're dealing with something way beyond our tech level here." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock at the door. Emily frowned. She wasn't expecting anyone. Grabbing a flashlight, she cautiously opened the door to find Alex standing on her porch. He looked different tonight, less confident, almost nervous. Without waiting for an invitation, he stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "We need to talk," he said quietly. Ryan stood up, instinctively positioning himself between Alex and Emily. "Who the hell are you?" he demanded. Alex ignored him, focusing on Emily instead. "You've been digging too deep," he said. "If you keep poking around, you'll put everyone in danger, including yourself." Emily crossed her arms defiantly. "And if we stop, will you just go back to whatever you're doing? Spying on us? Planning an invasion?" Alex sighed, running a hand through his hair. For a moment, he looked genuinely conflicted. "Look, I didn't choose this mission. My people sent me here to assess your planet. That's all I'm supposed to do. But things have changed." "What things?" Ryan pressed. Alex hesitated, then lowered his voice. "My superiors think Earth is weak. They see your divisions, your chaos, and assume you'll be easy to conquer. But they don't understand you. Not really. You adapt. You fight back. And if they underestimate you, it could lead to disaster for both our species." Emily exchanged a glance with Ryan. Despite his cryptic warnings, there was something sincere in Alex's tone. Maybe he wasn't entirely evil after all. "So what do you want from us?" Emily asked carefully. "For now, I need you to trust me," Alex replied. "Not because I deserve it, but because humanity might not survive without it." Neither Emily nor Ryan responded immediately. Trusting an alien was a leap neither of them was ready to make. But as Alex stood there looking more vulnerable than ever, they realized they might not have a choice. Part 4. The descent into the depths of the ocean was eerily quiet. The hum of the submarine's engines was barely audible, drowned out by the vast silence of the underwater world. Emily sat in the cramped cockpit alongside Maria, her fingers hovering over the control panel as they monitored their progress. Ryan's voice crackled through the comm system every few minutes, updating them on his team's status. So far, everything was going according to plan, or at least as close to a plan as they could manage given the circumstances. Outside the thick glass windows, The water grew darker with each passing moment. Sunlight faded into shadows, replaced by the faint glow of bioluminescent creatures drifting past like ghosts. It was beautiful in an alien kind of way, but Emily couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Every flicker of movement outside made her heart race, even though she knew it was probably just fish or jellyfish. Maria, on the other hand, seemed completely unfazed. She leaned forward, her eyes glued to the screens displaying data from the sub's sensors. "We're approaching the perimeter," she announced calmly. "I'm picking up faint energy signatures, probably the base's shielding." Emily nodded, gripping the edge of her seat. "Let's hope Alex's cloaking tech works. If those drones detect us—" "They won't," Maria interrupted, her tone firm. "Focus on your part of the mission. We'll handle the rest." Emily appreciated Maria's confidence even if it felt slightly forced. They'd spent days rehearsing every step of the operation, but nothing could truly prepare them for facing an alien stronghold. Still, she reminded herself why they were doing this: to protect humanity, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. Meanwhile, Ryan's team was navigating the outer edges of the Krylos base, searching for an entry point. His submarine moved cautiously, its lights dimmed to avoid drawing attention. Inside, he and two others, both ex-military volunteers recruited by Ryan, were tense but focused. None of them spoke unless necessary, their movements precise and deliberate. "Got it," one of the volunteers whispered, pointing to a weak spot in the shielding detected by their scanners. "Looks like a maintenance hatch. Should be big enough for us to slip through." Ryan double-checked the readings before giving the signal to proceed. Using tools provided by Alex, they carefully disabled the lock mechanism and eased the hatch open. Cold seawater rushed in briefly before stabilizing, allowing them to climb inside. The interior of the base was unlike anything they'd ever seen. Smooth, metallic walls curved seamlessly into the ceiling, glowing faintly with a blue hue. Strange symbols etched into the surface pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. The air was thick and humid, carrying a faint metallic tang that made Ryan's skin crawl. "This place gives me the creeps," muttered one of the volunteers, adjusting the strap of his backpack filled with explosives. "Stay sharp," Ryan warned. "We don't know what's waiting for us." They moved quickly but quietly, sticking to the shadows as they followed Alex's map. Their goal was simple: reach the central core of the base and plant the charges. Once detonated, the explosion would disable the facility's power grid, crippling its defenses and giving Emily's team a chance to hack into the system. But as they turned a corner, they froze. A group of Krylos drones hovered in the corridor ahead, their red lenses scanning methodically. Ryan held up a hand, signaling his team to stay low. He pulled out a small device, a jammer designed by Maria, and activated it. The drones paused mid-scan, their lights flickering before shutting off entirely. "That won't hold them forever," Ryan whispered. "Move!" They sprinted past the disabled drones, hearts pounding as they reached the next section of the base. Time was running out. Back in the second submarine, Emily and Maria were closing in on their objective. Thanks to Alex's guidance, they'd located the external access port for the Krylos network. Now came the tricky part: breaching it without triggering alarms. Maria worked swiftly, connecting their laptop to the alien interface. Lines of incomprehensible code scrolled across the screen as she attempted to decipher the encryption protocols. Her brow furrowed in concentration, beads of sweat forming on her forehead despite the cool temperature inside the sub. "How's it coming?" Emily asked anxiously. "Almost there," Maria replied, her voice tight. "Their systems are more complex than I expected, but I think I've found a vulnerability." Suddenly, warning lights flashed on the dashboard. Emily's stomach dropped. "What's happening?" "We've been detected," Maria said grimly. "They must have traced our connection attempt." Before Emily could respond, the submarine shuddered violently. Something had latched onto the hull, an attack drone, judging by the scraping sounds echoing through the metal shell. Maria cursed under her breath, typing furiously as she tried to override the drone's targeting system. "Can you disconnect it?" Emily asked, her voice rising in panic. I'm trying, Maria snapped. Just give me a minute. Emily clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. She glanced at the oxygen gauge. It was still holding steady, but if the drone breached the hull, they wouldn't last long. Seconds felt like hours as Maria worked, her fingers flying over the keyboard. Finally, the shaking stopped. The drone detached itself and floated away, its lights dimming as Maria successfully severed the link. She let out a shaky breath, leaning back in her chair. That should buy us some time. Let's not do that again. Emily managed a weak smile. Agreed. Now finish hacking so we can get out of here. Maria nodded, turning her attention back to the screen. After a few more tense moments, she grinned triumphantly. Got it, I've tapped into their mainframe. From here I can disable key systems and broadcast our warning message. Do it, Emily urged, and make sure everyone hears it. Maria uploaded the message, a recording explaining the Krylos threat and urging global cooperation. Emily couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. For the first time since this nightmare began, they were taking control of their fate instead of simply reacting to it. Unbeknownst to either team, Alex was monitoring their progress remotely from a safe distance. He watched the live feeds transmitted by the submarines, his expression unreadable. Part of him wanted to intervene, to ensure their success, but another part, the part that had served the Krylos Empire for decades, reminded him of the cost of betrayal. When he saw Ryan's team planting the final charge near the core, his resolve hardened. Whatever happened next, he knew where he stood. Humanity deserved a chance to fight back, even if it meant sacrificing himself to give them that opportunity. As the countdown timer ticked closer to 0, Alex whispered softly, almost to himself, "Good luck, Earth." And then, with a deafening roar, the base erupted in flames. Part 3. The next few days passed in a blur of tension and uncertainty. Emily and Ryan spent hours debating what to do about Alex, or whatever his real name was. On one hand, his warnings about an impending invasion sounded alarmingly plausible. On the other hand, trusting an alien, even one who claimed to have humanity's best interests at heart, felt like a gamble they couldn't afford to lose. Alex, for his part, remained eerily calm. He stayed in Willow Creek, occasionally checking in with Emily and Ryan, but mostly keeping to himself. When he did visit, he brought snippets of information, fragments of intercepted communications from his people, details about their technology, and vague hints about their plans. But he never revealed too much, always stopping short of giving them the full picture. "You're holding back," Ryan accused during one of these meetings. They were sitting in Emily's living room, surrounded by maps, laptops, and scattered notes. "If you really want us to trust you, start talking. Tell us everything." Alex leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "I've told you enough to understand the stakes," he said evenly. "If I give you more, it could compromise my position, and yours." "Compromise how?" Emily asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "We're already neck-deep in this mess because of you. Either help us properly or leave us alone." For a moment, Alex looked as though he might argue. Then he sighed and nodded. "Fine, but don't say I didn't warn you." He pulled out a small device, a sleek black rectangle that hummed faintly when activated, and placed it on the table. A holographic projection sprang to life, displaying a star map dotted with glowing red markers. "This is the Krylos Empire," Alex explained, gesturing toward the largest cluster of markers. "They've been expanding for centuries, consuming planets along the way. Earth is their latest target, not because it's special, but because it's convenient." Emily studied the map closely, her brow furrowed. "What are those smaller markers? Planets they've already taken over?" "Yes," Alex replied grimly. "Each one represents a world they've stripped of resources, or worse. Some civilizations resisted, but most fell quickly. My people aren't interested in coexisting. They only care about domination." Ryan frowned. "So why hasn't your empire attacked yet? What's stopping them?" "They're waiting for confirmation," Alex admitted. "That's why I'm here, to determine whether Earth poses a credible threat. If I report back that humans are weak and disorganized, the invasion will begin within months. And if you tell them we're stronger than they think, Emily pressed. Alex hesitated. Then they'll hesitate, but not for long. The Krylos leadership doesn't tolerate failure. If they decide Earth is worth conquering, they'll send their entire fleet to crush any resistance. The room fell silent as the weight of his words sank in. Emily glanced at Ryan, who was staring at the hologram with a mixture of anger and determination. She knew exactly what he was thinking. We can't let that happen. We need to fight back, Ryan said finally, breaking the silence. Not just wait around for them to make a move. We need to hit them first, disrupt their plans before they even get started. Alex shook his head. You're underestimating them. The Krylos are centuries ahead of you technologically. Even if you manage to destroy one ship, there are hundreds more waiting in orbit. Then we find another way, Emily interjected. Maybe we can't beat them outright, but we can slow them down, buy ourselves time to prepare. Alex looked at her skeptically. Time won't be enough. You'd need weapons capable of matching theirs, and you don't have that kind of firepower. What about sabotage? Ryan suggested. If we can infiltrate their systems, if we can disable key components of their operation, we might stand a chance. Alex considered this for a moment. It's risky, he said slowly. But it could work. Their main base on Earth is hidden underwater, near the Mariana Trench. It's heavily guarded, but if you could plant explosives there— Wait, Emily interrupted. You're saying we should sneak into an alien stronghold and blow it up? That sounds insane. It is insane, Alex agreed, but desperate times call for desperate measures. Besides, I know the layout of the base. I can guide you through it. Ryan raised an eyebrow. And why would you do that? Aren't you risking your own neck by helping us? Alex's jaw tightened. Because I don't want to see another planet destroyed. Because maybe, just maybe, humanity deserves a fighting chance. Over the next week, Emily, Ryan, and Alex worked tirelessly to prepare for the mission. They recruited a small team of trusted allies, including Maria Lopez, a brilliant astrophysicist who had been studying anomalies in Earth's atmosphere for years. Maria initially dismissed their claims as wild speculation until Alex revealed his true form. After recovering from the initial shock, she threw herself into the project with relentless enthusiasm. Together, the group devised a plan, split into two teams. Ryan would lead the infiltration squad, tasked with planting explosives inside the underwater base. Meanwhile, Emily and Maria would focus on hacking into the Krylos network, using Alex's intel to disable critical systems and broadcast a warning message to any remaining scouts on Earth. The logistics were daunting. The base was located miles beneath the ocean surface, protected by layers of advanced shielding and patrolled by armed drones. To reach it undetected, they'd need submersibles equipped with cloaking technology, something humanity hadn't invented yet. Fortunately, Alex provided schematics for modifying existing submarines, allowing them to bypass Krylos sensors. As the day of the mission approached, tensions ran high. Everyone knew the risks involved. If they succeeded, they might delay the invasion long enough for humanity to mount a proper defense. If they failed, the consequences would be catastrophic. On the eve of the operation, Emily found herself standing on the beach, staring out at the dark waves crashing against the shore. The salty breeze carried a sense of foreboding, reminding her of how much was at stake. Behind her, Ryan joined her, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. You okay? He asked softly. Emily shrugged. Just thinking about how crazy this all is. A month ago, I thought aliens were science fiction. Now I'm about to break into their secret lair. Ryan chuckled dryly. Yeah, life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. I keep wondering if we're doing the right thing, Emily admitted. What if we make things worse? What if this whole plan blows up in our faces? Ryan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. We won't know unless we try. And honestly, Em, I'd rather go down swinging than sit back and watch the world burn. Emily smiled faintly. Since when did you become such an optimist? Hey, someone's got to keep morale up around here, Ryan joked. Besides, we've got an alien on our side. How bad could it possibly go? They both laughed, though the humor felt hollow. Deep down, they knew the odds were stacked against them. But as long as they had each other, and Alex's reluctant assistance, they refused to give up hope. Early the next morning, the team gathered at a secluded dock where two modified submarines awaited them. The vessels were sleek and unassuming, their exteriors painted matte black to blend with the shadows. Inside, rows of blinking lights and unfamiliar controls lined the walls, evidence of Alex's technological contributions. Before boarding, Alex pulled Emily aside. His usual confident demeanor was replaced by something softer, almost vulnerable. "Be careful," he said quietly. "This isn't going to be easy." Emily nodded. "You too, don't do anything stupid." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Too late for that. As the submarine slipped beneath the waves, Emily took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The journey to the base would take hours, giving her plenty of time to reflect on the absurdity of her situation. Aliens, explosions, and global survival. It all sounded like the plot of a bad movie. Yet here she was, hurtling toward destiny, with nothing but courage and determination to guide her. Little did she know, the hardest part was still to come. Part 5. The explosion rippled through the water like a shockwave, sending debris spiraling in every direction. Inside Ryan's submarine, the crew braced themselves as the force of the blast rocked their vessel violently. Lights flickered and alarms blared, but the hull held firm. For a moment, no one spoke. They simply stared at each other, wide-eyed and breathing hard. "We did it," one of the volunteers finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was shaky but filled with relief. Ryan nodded, though his expression remained grim. "Not yet. We're not out of this place until we're back on the surface." He glanced at the monitor showing the exterior view. The glowing blue walls of the Krylos base were crumbling, collapsing inward as fire and smoke consumed the structure. It was chaos, a fiery maelstrom that lit up the dark ocean floor like daylight. But even amidst the destruction, Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The base was supposed to be heavily guarded, swarming with drones and automated defenses. Yet aside from the initial encounter, they'd faced surprisingly little resistance. "Too easy," he muttered under his breath. "What was that?" asked the second volunteer, adjusting his oxygen mask. "Nothing," Ryan replied quickly. "Let's move before reinforcements show up." Meanwhile, Emily and Maria were struggling to regain control of their own submarine. The shockwave had knocked out several systems, including navigation and propulsion. They drifted aimlessly in the murky water, unable to steer or communicate with Ryan's team. "This isn't good," Emily said, gripping the edge of her seat. Outside the window, chunks of twisted metal floated past, remnants of the destroyed base. "If we don't fix this soon, we'll run out of air." Maria didn't respond immediately. She was hunched over the control panel, frantically working to reboot the damaged systems. Her hands moved with practiced precision, flipping switches and rerouting power. Sweat dripped down her face, but she didn't stop. "I'm trying," she said tersely. "Just give me a minute." Emily wanted to help, but there wasn't much she could do besides watch and wait. She glanced at the oxygen gauge again. It was dropping faster than she'd hoped. If Maria couldn't get the sub operational within the next 10 minutes, they'd be in serious trouble. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, and the hum of the engines returned. Maria let out a sigh of relief, leaning back in her chair. "We're back online, let's get out of here." As the submarine began moving again, Emily felt a surge of hope. Maybe they'd actually pull this off. Maybe humanity still had a fighting chance. But then, without warning, the sub shuddered violently. Something massive slammed into the side of the vessel, denting the hull and sending sparks flying across the cockpit. Both women screamed as the impact threw them against their seats. "What the hell was that?" Emily shouted, her heart racing. Maria scrambled to check the external cameras. At first, all she saw was darkness. Then, slowly, a shadow emerged from the depths, a sleek, angular shape gliding silently toward them. It looked like some kind of alien predator, its body covered in jagged plates and glowing eyes that pulsed with an eerie green light. "It's a Krylos ship," Maria whispered, her voice trembling, "and it's coming straight for us." Back at the ruined base, Ryan's team was making slow progress toward the exit. The corridors were now filled with smoke and debris, making it difficult to see more than a few feet ahead. Their flashlights cut through the haze, revealing twisted metal and shattered machinery everywhere they looked. "We need to hurry," Ryan urged, gesturing for the others to pick up the pace. "If another wave of drones shows up, we're dead." They rounded a corner and froze. Blocking their path was a squad of Krylos soldiers, tall, armored figures with weapons raised. Their helmets obscured their faces, but their intent was clear. These humans weren't leaving alive. "Take cover," Ryan barked, diving behind a pile of rubble just as energy blasts tore through the air. The volunteers followed suit, returning fire with the limited weaponry they'd brought. The battle was fierce and chaotic, the narrow hallway amplifying the sound of explosions and shouts. Ryan gritted his teeth, realizing they were outnumbered and outgunned. Desperation fueled his movements as he reloaded his weapon and leaned around the corner to take another shot. One of the Krylos soldiers went down, but two more took its place. "We can't hold them off forever," one of the volunteers yelled, panic creeping into his voice. Ryan knew he was right. If they didn't find a way out soon, they'd be overwhelmed. He scanned the area quickly, searching for any advantage they could exploit. That's when he noticed it. A ventilation shaft high above them, partially hidden by a collapsed beam. "There," he pointed. "Boost me up and I'll clear the way." The volunteers hesitated, unsure if the plan would work, but with no better options they complied, hoisting Ryan onto their shoulders so he could reach the shaft. Using brute strength and sheer determination, he pried open the grate and climbed inside. Once inside, he turned and extended a hand to help the others up. "Go, go, go," he urged. Pulling them in one by little, space was cramped and suffocating. But it offered a temporary reprieve from the Krylos soldiers below. Crawling on hands and knees, they moved as fast as they could, following the shaft toward what they hoped was an exit. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder. The Krylos weren't giving up. While Ryan's team fought for survival, Emily and Maria faced their own desperate struggle. The Krylos ship had latched onto their submarine, attempting to breach the hull. Emergency alerts blared constantly. "Warning of imminent structural failure." "We have to detach," Maria shouted, her fingers flying over the controls. "If we don't, they'll crush us." "And then what?" Emily countered. "We'll be stranded down here with no way to escape." Maria hesitated, weighing their options. Finally, she made a decision. "Trust me." With a sharp twist of a lever, she activated the emergency release mechanism. The submarine broke free from the Krylos ship's grip, spinning wildly as it careened through the water. Emily clung to her seat, her stomach lurching with each violent movement. When the sub finally stabilized, Maria exhaled sharply. "That should buy us some time. Now let's head for the rendezvous point." But as they sped away, neither woman noticed the faint glow of tracking devices embedded in the hull during the collision. The Krylos weren't done with them yet. Above, the surface. Alex watched the unfolding events from a hidden vantage point. His expression was unreadable, his mind racing with conflicting emotions. Humanity had proven itself resourceful and resilient. But would it be enough? A sudden transmission interrupted his thoughts. It was from the Krylos command, demanding an explanation for the destruction of the underwater base. Alex clenched his fists, knowing this was the moment of truth. "They're stronger than you think," he said softly, addressing the voice on the other end. "Stronger than anyone gives them credit for." Then, with a deep breath, he severed the connection and prepared to make his final stand. Whatever happened next, he vowed to protect the fragile spark of hope he'd seen in humanity. For a second, the Krylos ship loomed larger than anything Emily and Maria had ever seen. Its sleek obsidian surface reflected no light, blending seamlessly with the darkness of the ocean depths. As their submarine raced toward the surface, they could feel the vibrations of the massive vessel pursuing them. It wasn't just following, it was hunting. "We're not going to make it," Emily said, her voice trembling as she stared at the sonar display. The blip representing the alien ship was closing in fast, its speed unmatched by their damaged craft. They're too close. Maria didn't respond immediately. Her hands moved frantically over the controls, rerouting every ounce of power to the engines. The sub groaned under the strain, but its acceleration barely improved. She glanced at the oxygen gauge again, still dropping. They were running out of time in more ways than one. "Then we improvise," Maria said finally, her tone sharp but determined. "If they catch us, we fight back." Emily blinked. "Fight? With what? This is a research sub, not a war machine." Maria smirked faintly despite the gravity of the situation. "You underestimate human ingenuity." She reached for a panel beneath the dashboard and pulled out a small device. A prototype weapon Ryan had insisted they bring along, just in case. It looked like a cross between a flare gun and a taser, designed to emit an electromagnetic pulse capable of disabling nearby electronics. "It won't stop that thing completely," Maria admitted, holding up the device. "But if we time it right, we might blind their sensors long enough to slip away." Emily nodded, though her stomach churned with doubt. "Do it." Maria armed the device and positioned herself near the release hatch on the sub's roof. Taking a deep breath, she opened the hatch slightly, allowing cold seawater to rush in. Then with careful aim, she fired the pulse directly at the approaching Krylo ship. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then the alien vessel shuddered violently, its glowing lights flickering before dimming entirely. The pursuit slowed, giving Emily and Maria the chance they needed to put distance between themselves and their pursuer. "That actually worked," Emily exclaimed, relief flooding her voice. "Don't celebrate yet," Maria warned, sealing the hatch and returning to her seat. "That was a temporary fix at best. They'll recover soon, and when they do, they'll be angrier than ever." Meanwhile, Ryan's team had reached the edge of the ruined base. Crawling through the ventilation shafts had been grueling, but it had paid off. They'd managed to evade the Krylo soldiers and find an alternate exit. Now, they stood on the ocean floor staring up at the distant glow of sunlight filtering through the water above. "We need to move," Ryan urged, checking his oxygen tank. "Our air won't last much longer down here." The volunteers nodded, adjusting their gear and preparing to ascend. But before they could take more than a few steps, the ground beneath them began to tremble. A low rumble echoed through the water, growing louder with each passing second. "What's happening?" one of the volunteers asked nervously. Ryan scanned the area, his eyes widening as he spotted the source of the disturbance. Rising from the wreckage of the destroyed base was a colossal mechanical creature, an underwater drone unlike anything they'd encountered before. Its body was segmented, resembling some kind of metallic serpent, and its glowing red eyes locked onto them instantly. "It's a Guardian unit," Ryan muttered, backing away slowly. "They must have activated it to hunt us down." The drone surged forward, its massive jaws snapping shut mere inches from where they stood. The three men scattered, diving behind debris to avoid being crushed. Ryan raised his weapon and fired repeatedly at the creature's head, but the bullets bounced harmlessly off its armored plating. "This isn't working," the second volunteer shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "We can't fight that thing." Ryan clenched his jaw, his mind racing. There had to be a way to disable it, or at least distract it long enough for them to escape. His gaze fell on the remnants of the base behind them. If they could lure the drone into the collapsing structure, maybe they could trap it. "Follow me," he yelled, sprinting toward the ruins. The others hesitated for a split second before following, dodging the drone's attacks as they ran. Inside the crumbling base, Ryan led them deeper into the maze of corridors, weaving through falling debris and bursts of steam. The drone pursued relentlessly, smashing through walls and ceilings as it chased them. Finally, they reached a large chamber filled with unstable energy conduits, the perfect trap. "Now!" Ryan shouted, pulling a detonator from his belt. The volunteers scrambled to safety as he pressed the button, triggering a series of explosions that brought the ceiling crashing down. The drone let out a deafening screech as it was buried under tons of rubble. Ryan collapsed against a wall, breathing heavily. "Let's get out of here before the whole place collapses." As both teams fought for survival, Alex prepared for his final act of defiance. He had returned to the cloaked ship hidden in the woods outside Willow Creek, knowing it would be detected sooner or later. The Krelos Command had already branded him a traitor, and their fleet was en route to Earth. If humanity stood any chance of surviving, they needed a head start, and Alex intended to give it to them. Using the ship's advanced systems, he broadcast a message across all frequencies, encoding it in multiple languages so humans worldwide could understand. The transmission included everything he knew about the Krylos, their technology, their tactics, and their weaknesses. It also contained a warning: prepare for war, because the Krylos wouldn't stop until Earth was theirs. When the message finished, Alex turned his attention to the ship's core reactor. He programmed it to overload, creating a massive explosion that would destroy not only the vessel but also any incoming Krylos reinforcements within range. It was a desperate gamble, but it might buy humanity the time they needed to unite and defend themselves. As the countdown timer ticked closer to 0, Alex allowed himself a moment of reflection. For years, he had served the Krylos Empire without question, believing in their mission of conquest. But witnessing humanity's resilience and determination had changed something inside him. These flawed, chaotic creatures deserved a chance to prove themselves, to show that strength wasn't defined by domination, but by cooperation and hope. The ship's alarms blared, signaling the impending detonation. Alex closed his eyes, a faint smile crossing his face. "Good luck, Earth," he whispered, and then, with a blinding flash of light, the forest erupted in flames. Part 7. The explosion in the forest lit up the night sky like a second sunrise. Flames roared into the air, consuming trees and sending shockwaves rippling across the landscape. In Willow Creek, windows shattered, and people stumbled out of woe, their homes shielding their eyes from the sudden brightness. It was chaos. Screams, car alarms, and the distant wail of emergency sirens filled the air. Emily and Maria were still underwater when the blast occurred, but they felt its effects immediately. The shockwave traveled through the ocean, shaking their submarine violently and throwing them off balance. For a moment, neither woman spoke, too stunned to process what had just happened. "What was that?" Emily finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Maria stared at the sonar display where the Krelos ship's signal had suddenly disappeared. I think Alex did something big." Emily's heart sank. Despite everything, despite his cryptic warnings and reluctant assistance, she had started to see Alex as an ally, a complicated, flawed individual who had chosen humanity over his own kind. And now it seemed he was gone. "We need to get back," Emily said firmly, wiping tears from her eyes before Maria could notice. "Whatever he did, it bought us time. We can't waste it." Maria nodded, focusing on steering the submarine toward the surface. They broke through the waves just as dawn began to break, painting the horizon in shades of orange and pink. But instead of peace, the world around them was in turmoil. Smoke rose from the direction of the forest where Alex's ship had been. Hidden and military helicopters circled overhead, searching for answers. Ryan and his team emerged from the ocean shortly after, exhausted but alive. Their makeshift raft bobbed gently on the water as they caught their breath, staring at the fiery glow in the distance. None of them needed to say anything. They all knew what it meant. "He sacrificed himself," Ryan muttered, his voice heavy with emotion. "For us." One of the volunteers shook his head in disbelief. "Why? Why would he do that?" "Because he believed in us," Ryan replied quietly. "Because he thought we could win." They paddled toward shore in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. When they reached land, they found Emily and Maria waiting for them, both looking pale and shaken. Without a word, Emily hugged Ryan tightly, relief washing over her when she realized he was safe. "We saw the explosion," she said, pulling back to look at him. "Do you think—" Ryan nodded grimly. "Yeah, it was Alex." Maria stepped forward, holding out a tablet displaying the message Alex had broadcast before the explosion. "He sent this," she explained. "It's everything we need to know about the Krylos, their tech, their plans, their weaknesses. He gave us a fighting chance." Emily took the tablet, scrolling through the information with growing determination. "Then we honor his sacrifice by using it, by fighting back." Over the next few days, the group worked tirelessly to share Alex's message with the world. They contacted trusted journalists, scientists, and government officials, providing evidence of the Krylos threat and urging global cooperation. At first, many dismissed their claims as conspiracy theories or hoaxes, but when satellite images revealed the destruction caused by the explosion, and when strange energy signatures began appearing in Earth's atmosphere, people started to listen. Military forces around the globe mobilized, scrambling to prepare defenses against an enemy no one fully understood. Scientists collaborated on developing new technologies based on the data Alex had provided, while engineers worked to adapt existing weapons to counter Krylos shields and drones. For the first time in history, humanity united under a single purpose: survival. But even as nations came together, tensions ran high. Governments argued over strategies and resources, while panic spread among civilians. Some chose to flee cities, seeking refuge in remote areas. Others barricaded themselves indoors, stockpiling food and supplies. The world teetered on the edge of collapse, held together only by the hope that humanity could rise to meet the challenge. Back in Willow Creek, the group set up a makeshift command center in Emily's house. Maps covered the walls, marked with potential Krylos landing sites and weak points in their defenses. Laptops hummed constantly, processing data and coordinating efforts with allies worldwide. Despite the overwhelming odds, there was a sense of purpose in the air, a shared belief that they could make a difference. Late one night, Emily sat alone in the living room, staring at the glowing screen of her laptop. The image of Alex's final transmission lingered in her mind, along with the memory of his quiet determination. She wondered if he had known how much impact his actions would have, if he had believed humanity truly stood a chance. A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Ryan entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Emily and sat down beside her. "You should get some rest," he said gently. "You've been pushing yourself too hard." "I can't," Emily admitted, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "Every time I close my eyes, I see him. Alex. What he did. It wasn't just about saving us. It was about trusting us to finish what he started." Ryan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "He underestimated us at first, just like his people did. But in the end, he saw something worth protecting, something worth dying for." Emily smiled faintly. "And now it's up to us to prove him right." As the days turned into weeks, preparations intensified. Cities fortified themselves, digging trenches and erecting barriers. Factories churned out experimental weapons designed to pierce Krylos armor. Amateur radio operators relayed messages between communities, spreading news and rallying support. Even ordinary citizens contributed however they could, volunteering at shelters, donating supplies, or simply staying informed. In space, the Krylos fleet approached Earth, its massive ships casting ominous shadows over the planet below. There, leaders had expected submission, not resistance. But as they descended, they encountered something unexpected: a united front. Every nation, every community, every person had rallied together, armed with knowledge and resolve. The battle that followed was fierce and unrelenting. Alien vessels clashed with human fighters in the skies, while ground troops fought hand-to-hand against Krylos soldiers. Explosions lit up the horizon, and the sound of warfare echoed across continents. Humanity suffered losses, cities reduced. To rubble, lives cut short, but they refused to surrender. At the heart of the conflict, Emily, Ryan, Maria, and their allies coordinated attacks, exploiting the weaknesses Alex had revealed. They targeted key ships in the Krylos fleet, disabling their engines and cutting off communication channels. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. On the final day of the invasion, the remaining Krylos forces retreated, their once mighty fleet battered and broken. As their ships disappeared into the void of space, A cheer erupted across the planet, a mix of relief, triumph, and defiance. Humanity had won, not because they were stronger or more advanced, but because they had fought together, refusing to give up even when all seemed lost. In Willow Creek, Emily stood outside her home, gazing up at the stars. Tears streamed down her face, but they were tears of pride rather than sorrow. Beside her, Ryan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We did it," he said softly. "Against all odds, we did it." Emily nodded, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. Alex was right. Surviving us wasn't easy, for anyone. And somewhere in the vastness of space, the remnants of the Krylos fleet drifted silently, their commanders grappling with a truth they had never anticipated. Humanity was more than just a target. It was a force to be reckoned with. Part 8. Weeks turned into months, and the scars of the Krylos invasion began to heal. Slowly, painfully, but surely. The world was forever changed, its people marked by the battles they had fought and the sacrifices they had witnessed. In Willow Creek, life started to return to a semblance of normalcy, though reminders of the conflict were everywhere. Burned patches of forest where Alex's ship had exploded, makeshift memorials for those who had lost their lives, and the lingering sense of unity that bound everyone together. Emily found herself reflecting on these changes as she sat on her porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky was painted in hues of orange and purple, a peaceful contrast to the chaos that had once filled it. She held a notebook in her lap, jotting down thoughts for an article she planned to write, a story about resilience, hope, and the strength of humanity. It would be dedicated to Alex, though his name would remain anonymous to the public. His role in saving Earth would stay a secret, known only to those who had been part of the mission. Ryan joined her after a while, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to Emily and settled into the chair beside her. "Still writing?" he asked, nodding toward the notebook. "Yeah," Emily replied with a small smile. "Someone needs to tell this story. Not just the war, but what came after, how we rebuilt, how we learned to trust each other again." Ryan sipped his coffee thoughtfully. "It's strange, isn't it? Before all this, I didn't think the world could ever come together like that. But when push came to shove, we did." Emily nodded. "Alex saw something in us that even we didn't see in ourselves. He believed we were worth saving even when his own people didn't." The mention of Alex cast a shadow over them both, but it wasn't sadness, it was gratitude. They owed him their lives, their freedom, and the future of their planet. Without his sacrifice, none of it would have been possible. Maria spent much of her time working with scientists and engineers to study the remnants of Krylos technology left behind during the battle. Governments around the world had pooled resources to create research facilities dedicated to understanding alien tech, hoping to use it not only for defense, but also to advance human knowledge. Maria became a key figure in this effort, her brilliance earning her recognition far beyond Willow Creek. One day, as she examined a piece of salvaged Krylos shielding, she couldn't help but think about Alex. His decision to betray his people had given humanity access to technology that might otherwise have taken centuries to develop. Yet despite his contributions, he remained a mystery, a stranger who had risked everything for a species he barely knew. "He trusted us," Maria murmured to herself, tracing the edge of the metallic fragment. "Now it's our job to honor that trust." In cities and towns across the globe, monuments were erected to commemorate the victory over the Krylos. Some were simple plaques listing the names of fallen heroes. Others were grand statues depicting soldiers standing side by side with civilians. But perhaps the most meaningful tribute was the newfound spirit of cooperation among nations. Borders that had once divided people now seemed less significant, replaced by a shared commitment to protecting the planet. School children learned about the invasion in history classes, marveling at stories of bravery and ingenuity. Scientists studied the data collected during the conflict, making breakthroughs in fields ranging from medicine to energy production. Artists created works inspired by the event, paintings, songs, and films celebrating humanity's triumph against overwhelming odds. Yet beneath the surface of progress and optimism there was also caution. Military forces remained vigilant, monitoring the skies for any sign of the Krylos's return. Early warning systems were put in place, and plans for evacuation drills became routine. Humanity had won the first battle, but no one forgot that the war might not truly be over. Months later, Emily published her article, titled, "Surviving Us Wasn't Easy, but They Underestimated What We're Capable of." It quickly gained international attention. Readers praised its honesty and insight, calling it a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Emily received messages from people all over the world thanking her for reminding them of what they had overcome and what they could achieve if they continued to stand together. Among the responses was one that caught her eye. It came from an anonymous sender and contained only 3 words: "He would be proud." Emily stared at the message for a long time, tears welling up in her eyes. She didn't need to ask who he was. She knew. On a quiet night several years later, Ryan stood on a hill overlooking Willow Creek, gazing at the stars through a telescope. The device was crude compared to the advanced technology humanity had begun developing, but it served its purpose. He often came here to think, finding solace in the vastness of space. Tonight, however, something unusual caught his attention. A faint glimmer moving steadily across the sky. At first he thought it was a satellite or a meteor, but as he adjusted the telescope, he realized it was neither. The object was too large, too deliberate in its trajectory. His heart raced as he reached for his phone, dialing Emily's number. "Em, you need to see this," he said urgently when she answered. I think it's them." Emily arrived within minutes, binoculars in hand. Together they watched the object grow larger, descending slowly toward Earth. Fear gripped them both, memories of the last invasion flooding back. But then, something unexpected happened. The object transmitted a signal. Ryan scrambled to decode the message using equipment left over from their original mission. When the translation finally appeared on the screen, he froze, reading it aloud, in disbelief. "To the people of Earth, your courage has earned our respect. We will not return. May your future be bright." For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Emily let out a shaky laugh, tears streaming down her face. "They've withdrawn," she whispered. "We actually scared them off." Ryan nodded, overwhelmed by the weight of what it meant. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. And somewhere, in the depths of space, Alex's legacy lived on. As the object disappeared into the void, Emily turned to Ryan with a determined smile. "Let's make sure we keep proving him right." And under the watchful gaze of the stars, they vowed to do just that, to build a better world, one worthy of the sacrifices made to protect it.